Hey, and welcome back to the MGR podcast, where we talk with real people about real money and real estate. Today, we got a super exciting episode planned for you today. We got a special guest, Nick McCollum. He runs some real estate investing here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, and he has a lot of knowledge in investing and property management and development and a little bit of everything. So we're going to chat with him a little bit today, and I'm super excited to have him on, and he's going to share a lot of good stuff with us today. So let's jump right in. So Nick, my man, how you doing?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me on the show. It's good to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you here today. So, we're going to ask you a little bit of everything today, and I'm just excited to kind of dive in. Nick and I have been good friends for a long, long time, and, I know a lot about him, but I want him to share kind of where he's from, what he's doing right now, and his goals for the future. So let's get right into it. Nick, tell me a little bit about you, about where you're from, a little bit about your family, and just a little bit about you.
Yeah, sure. So I am what am I? I'm a husband, dad, real estate investor. My day job is as a computer in New Brunswick, which is about an hour away from here, which is where you grew up too. That's kind of how we got to know each other way back in the day.
That's right.
I went to university at the University of Brunswick, got a degree in math, and then took a couple jobs after college as an investment analyst at a stock market research newsletter, and then as a computer programmer after that. My first foray into real estate, I was about 22 or 23. I got into house hacking, so I bought a house that had 4 bedrooms. Two guys moved in with me. Between the rent that they paid me and some money that I had to kick in, the mortgage and everything was really easily covered. And kind of quickly realized that real estate was not as crazy hard as I thought it would be. So shortly after that, got interested in some multifamily investing, and now we're up to, by the end of next month, we'll have about 40 units under management. So that's our story in a nutshell. We can dive deeper into any of those if you want.
Yeah, that's awesome. So whereabouts are most of your units and stuff, and where are you trying to target here in New Brunswick specifically?
Yeah, so right now they're all in Fredericton, New Brunswick, mostly because we've built up like an internal property management company inside our organization that we can use to manage all of them. We wouldn't be opposed to going outside of Fredericton, but we would either have to decide between partnering with a property management company in the new geo or trying to buy enough units in that geo to spin up our own division in that region where we're investing.
Yeah. And you do quite a bit of research pretty consistently on like the major cities in New Brunswick to try and, make sure that you're getting the best return on your investment, whether it's in Moncton, St. John, or Fredericton. And you have found, like you showed me some research in the past where, at least for landlords and stuff like this, Fredericton has some of the higher rents and some of the best opportunity kind of thing and consistency, would you say?
Yeah, there's a few things that make Fredericton stand out, but between the other cities in New Brunswick. So, I mean, in New Brunswick, there's basically 3 big cities: Fredericton, St. John, Moncton. And they all have different things that anchor their economy. In Fredericton, it's basically IT and government. Fredericton's the capital of New Brunswick, so we have a lot of provincial offices here and stuff. And I'm just a lot more bullish on the IT and government sectors than I am on, St. John's very tied to the energy sector because Irving Oil's there. And so because of that economy fluctuates with the price of oil, and that's just not something that we're as interested in participating in. Yeah. But yeah, we do a lot of research, and Fredericton was kind of a good fit, not just because we lived here, but because of the economics that are underneath it. And then the next geography that we go to, we'll do a lot of research on that same type of factors too.
Yeah, because it's not like you've always been from Fredericton, and that's like I remember a couple of years ago, like you were in St. John, you were in Sussex, and I remember trying to convince you, you can move back to Fredericton, and so it's it's always great having you around here because we connect and hang out a lot, so that's awesome. But so you bought your first property back, when you were 22 or 23, you say. Now tell me a little bit about that deal. Like, what did you pay for it? What was like, what were the rents back then? Eventually when you sold it a couple years later, was it a good purchase, to help get you started into real estate?
Yeah, it was awesome. So it was a little bungalow in Skyline Acres in Fredericton. For anyone familiar with the city, you'll know where that is. It was 4 bedrooms when we bought it, and one of the guys that was moving in with me was very handy at construction. So he helped me finish up the basement. We put in a 5th bedroom and framed in kind of a new living area in the basement. I bought it for 185 with 20% down. So do the math on that. It was a little under $40,000 to get into it. And then between the basement renovation and then just the wicked price appreciation that we got from being in the Fredericton area, we sold it for 270 about a year and a half later. And that was a lot of the seed money that allowed our real estate business to really take off.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, I mean, a lot of people are probably thinking like, okay, you know, you bought your first house, you had, you know, $40,000, you know, as a down payment because you put 20% down, and you probably could have gotten away, you know, because you moved into it as your personal residence, you probably could have gotten away with 5%. Am I correct?
Yeah. So at that time, I was still working at this stock market newsletter company and was very invested in the stock market, followed it pretty methodologically. So I knew very well what types of returns I could get in the stock market. And the way that I approached the decision on whether to do 5% down or 20% down was I basically looked at the extra money that I would have, the 15% that I would save by putting 5% down. And I said, okay, what kind of returns can I get on that in the stock market versus how much extra am I going to be paying on that 15% in terms of extra mortgage payments and your CMHC insurance fee and things like that. And I decided to do 20% down because the ROI was better than stocks, and it was like a guaranteed ROI because I knew exactly what I was getting into. Whereas stocks I could guess, but you know, two months after I bought that house, COVID happened and stocks went down 40%. So that ended up being a good choice.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, all that stuff is so hard to predict, but you know, if you look at the numbers and you look consistently at it and you just kind of follow the trends and whatnot, and you just be smart with it, then yeah, you get more lucky, you know?
Yeah.
So give me like, I know that you've done like some different investing over the past couple of years. You know, you've got a good system for maybe it's like savings and stuff like this. Now, as like a university student, because in a couple months, I'm going to be doing a seminar with university students, just kind of talking with them about how they can begin to save, how they can buy their first home. What are some strategies or things that like university students should be doing like right now to kind of help start saving a little bit for that initial down payment?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is just budgeting. There's no magic hack to saving up money. You just need to figure out what you earn and spend less than that and put it away somewhere and not touch it. Aside from that, if you're looking to get a piece of real estate, there's a few things you can do that will help you later on too. You should be tracking your credit score through a tool like Credit Karma, which is what I use. So Credit Karma alerts you anytime there's like a credit inquiry on your report. So if someone is fraudulently applying for credit under your name, you'll get notified of that right away. It also allows you to see kind of what factors are impacting your score and exactly where your score is over time. So for us, for example, if we're doing a big expansion and I have to apply for a couple loans all within the same month, I will see how that dings my credit score live in Credit Karma, and I'll get notifications anytime a bank goes to pull my credit. So if you can get a Credit Karma account, it's free, and then sign up for a credit card and use it responsibly. You'll have a good credit score when you come out of college, and that'll help you a lot too, because there's not really any amount of savings that will overcome a bad credit score if you get out of college.
Yeah.
Having your 20% down is not going to cut it if your credit's awful.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, absolutely. And you know, I've got some friends and family that have like graduated university or like are in university now, and they don't have a credit card.
Yeah,
and they're like being like, "Oh man, I want to buy a house," and I'm just like, man, not having a credit card, not having any kind of credit built up, like it really dings you. So like, I know this isn't super real estate related, but like, what are your thoughts on like when somebody should get a credit card, or like, is it that valuable to just kind of start doing that early?
Yeah, I mean, so it's super valuable. I think the sooner the better, as long as you understand how they work really, really well. So some people don't really understand, like it seems very basic to us, but there are legitimately people out there who don't understand that you have to pay back a credit card after you spend on it. So if you don't feel like you fully understand how credit cards work, that's your first step. Yeah. Now, assuming you have a really good understanding of how they work, I think the sooner the better. I mean, in the United States, you can, you can put your child as an authorized user on your credit card the day they are born, and it'll start billing their credit. So there are some crazy things you can do. I don't know if you can do that in Canada or not, but I have a friend who does that in the US. And then in Canada, I know you can get a credit card in your own name when you turn 18 or 19, I think 19, and you should. And just, even if you just get the credit card and don't use it, it'll help your credit a lot. Because what the situation you described is what they call a thin credit file. So your credit might not have anything bad in it, but the file of your credit is so thin, meaning there's not any activity that you've done historically over credit, that lenders can't actually tell whether you're a good user of credit or not because you just have no activity. You know, it'd be like going to play basketball with someone who says they're a good player, but they've never played before.
Yeah.
You actually don't know. They might be great. Who knows? But
I'm athletic. I can make it happen. But
yeah. So lenders, like the reason they use credit scores is because they want to see that you have a history of responsible financial activity, and a credit score is one tool to measure that.
Yeah, awesome. So okay, so you bought. He mentioned earlier. You said by the end of this month or next month, you're going to be at around 40 units here in Fredericton, which is awesome. And so tell me a little bit about I've chatted before about like the BRRRR strategy. Buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and then repeat kind of thing. So I mean, it's a pretty common strategy amongst like investors, and whether they're flippers or long-term investors and stuff like this. So we've chatted previously about kind of how your strategy is a little bit different. So give me your strategy on buying units. What you're looking for, and how your BRRRR strategy is just a little bit different.
Sure. So I'll start just by describing like the conventional BRRRR strategy, and then I'll tell you our twist on it, because guarantee you there's people listening who don't know what that means. It has nothing to do with temperature. But Mackay said it. It's buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. So the idea is you buy a building, you renovate it, so you invest some money and fix it all up, make it nice. You rent it, and presumably if you did a good job on the renovations, you can rent it for considerably more than what it would have rented for before you renovated it. Then you refinance. So what that means is you go to your lender and you say, hey, you originally gave me a mortgage for $100,000 on this property. The rents are a lot higher now. Can you please give me a mortgage for $150,000? What that means is your original mortgage gets taken out, paid off with the new mortgage, and then they deposit the difference, that $50,000, right into your bank account. And this is where the next step comes in. You repeat that whole strategy. So you take that $50,000, you buy another property to renovate, and many people use this strategy to pretty quickly build a considerable little real estate business with only one original investment. It's what we did. Yeah. There's a really popular website, real estate investing website called Bigger Pockets, that basically a whole media empire built on how to educate people to do the BRRRR strategy. So if this sounds interesting to you, give Bigger Pockets a read. It's a good resource for this. What we've done that's a little different is we don't typically renovate the units very extensively, but we just remanage them. So a lot of places we've bought from, either the rents are just considerably lower than what the market rent is in Fredericton. So if you regularly see listings for $1,000 for an apartment, and you see a similar apartment for $500 and you can buy it, generally there's an opportunity to raise the rents a little bit just to get them in line with what the average rent is for that market. And then there's just all kinds of other management things we can do to save money too. So like we've seen, we've bought buildings where the owner was renting a dumpster, but it was within the region for city garbage removal, so they didn't need to. So there's like a couple $100 a month that you can save. And ultimately, lenders, they don't lend to you based on your rent. They lend to you based on your profits. So one thing we do is we enforce that residents always pay their utilities. We feel it's better alignment of interests, where if you want to crank your apartment up to 30 degrees, you can do that, but you have to pay for it, not the landlord. So just like little things like that. So our strategy is basically buy, remanage, rent, refinance, repeat. And we've used that to build up to 40 units in 4 years or whatever it's been, 3 years.
And we've talked a lot about that, like how, a lot of these buildings, and because the market shifted so quick over the past couple of years, like in the rental, costs, got so much higher. A lot of these buildings, like you try and buy them, and then, the sellers want these top dollars because they saw, 1 6 unit sell for this, and then another 6 units selling for this. So then they're thinking their 6 unit is worth the same amount, when really it's only because those other buildings were, had higher rents. And so, like we've talked about how a lot of these buildings that are, overpriced, it's usually due to just poor management, and, they're not keeping up with the market rents. And some people don't care about that. Like if they want to hold on to the buildings forever, they just care about having good tenants that are just paying them just enough to get by. But if it comes down to, wanting to sell it, you can't be expecting people to pay top dollar if the rents are stupid low, because the banks just won't lend to most people.
When you buy multifamily property, you're not buying property, you're buying a business. And just like any other business, they get valued based on how much money they make. In the same way that you would think one business that makes $1 million is worth half as much as another business that makes $2 million, real estate's the same way. It doesn't matter how many units there are, it doesn't matter how many bedrooms, it all just comes down to how much money they make. So So what, we've been working together for the past couple of years,
and every year you're kind of getting more and more units, which is awesome. Now, what is your goal? So this year, how many units did you add to your portfolio this year?
Yeah, this was a big year for us, just primarily because we, of the original like 3 properties we bought, we refinanced all of them and used all that money to buy more properties. So at the start of this year, we had 13 units. We'll probably end the year with 41 units. But again, that was largely from refinances. And you should also note too that 18 of those units that we're adding are mobile home park pads, which are way cheaper than apartments. So apartments in Fredericton usually go for 2 unit might be $240. That's low for a 2 unit, but as you get up into real multifamily, like 4 or 5, 6 units, they usually go for $120,000 to $150,000 a door. We're buying these mobile home park pads for like $30,000 a door. So you might not want to count that as a door, but it's a lease that we manage and it makes money for us. So, and we really like the mobile home park business. It's different than apartments, but it's a lot better. We can talk about that later.
Yeah. I'd love to come back to that and kind of talk about that new kind of venture that you're taking on with the mini home parks and stuff like that. But this year, okay, maybe you added like 24 to 25 units or something, or 25 leases. What's your goal for next year? Is it to kind of just get all those managed better and just clean those up, or are you hoping to add another 25 units next year?
Yeah, definitely not adding 25 units again next year. It's been busy, but so I'll talk about our goals like for this year going in, and then our goals for longer term. This year, the biggest thing we wanted to achieve is build systems and processes that are going to allow us to scale up quickly without compromising a few things. Number one, our bookkeeping. So we want our bookkeeping to be real dialed in. We want to know how much money we're making, what our main expenses are, and we want our filings with the government to be tuned in so that we don't ever get nailed on audit or anything like that.
Yeah.
Number two, we want to make sure our tenant experience is super good. So until earlier this year, if tenants had problems, they would literally text me, and that doesn't scale well at all, as I'm sure you can imagine. I have to be able to turn off from time to time too. So, and then number three, we wanted to be able to improve our maintenance scheduling. So when work orders happened, again, it would just come to me. Tenant would usually text me, and I have a day job. Like, this is still a side business for me that I'm not working full time on. So a lot of times I wouldn't get to it right away, which would result in either, bad outcomes for residents, which I really care about, or occasionally like even property damage, which I also care about in a different way. So to fix all that, we've hired our first full-time employee. So I have kind of a property management assistant now, and she's taken over all of our bookkeeping, all of our accounting, and it's been awesome. And all of our resident relations. So that includes like just questions and answers, but she also does all of our leasing, all of our work order, choreographing, et cetera. So that's been great. So
that's awesome.
To say that, my big goal for this year was to hire someone and get them to systematize everything. So now we can slot in more units, and it's very seamless. Like, it doesn't result in more direct stress for me. And we set up a compensation plan for her where the more units we manage, the more she gets paid. So I win, she wins, everyone wins. We've also started adopting better software and stuff, which we can talk about later. But now all of our residents have a paper trail for every interaction that they have with us. And I can see it. Our assistants can see it. Once we start onboarding third-party property owners to this system too, they'll be able to see it too. So like, if you own a building that we manage, you'll be able to go in and see the work orders if you feel like you have any reason to check in on us.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's huge, because I know a lot of people when they're kind of growing their businesses, like for me in real estate, like as a realtor, my goal has been to kind of get to that point where you kind of teeter on that line of, okay, I'm super busy and I can manage, all of this myself. But if I really want to scale things up, take it to the next level, and also offer better services, there needs to be a time when you start hiring externally. And so you hired, an assistant for that kind of stuff. I hired, some folks to do some website, digital stuff, social media marketing and stuff like that for me. And it just makes a huge difference. And like you said, you're still working a full-time, job, you have a wife and kids, and, and anybody that is doing real estate investing, anybody that's doing property management, they know that that also is a full-time job, right? So you can kind of understand kind of where, one, why you need to do this, and two, you can kind of probably imagine the load that it kind of takes off you, but you're still going to stay busy. But
Yeah, seriously. So it's been good. For me, a real weakness for me as a leader was like my refusal to delegate stuff over time. And I was always, I think, had this irrational fear that I would hire someone and they would do a bad job and then I would have to fire them or whatever. And it all just comes down to expectations management. So we've been pretty deliberate about saying, like, here's the things you're supposed to do, here's the things you're not supposed to do. And we have like basically an internal wiki that we use to keep track of all this stuff. So it's been super good. It's also made me think about why we do things the way we do, because she's smart. She often asks me questions like, why do you do it this way? This kind of seems dumb. Maybe we should do it this other way. That's like obviously faster and better. So it's helped us to be a lot better. She's actually, I would say, doing, for everything that she's taken over from me, she's doing a better job than I used to do of it. So my fears did not materialize.
Yeah, that's
which
awesome.
is good.
That's awesome. Okay, so we were kind of chatting about goals and stuff.
Yep.
So how old are you now?
How old am I?
How old are you?
How old are you? I'm 3 years older than you, I think.
I'm 25, so you must be 27 or 28.
27, yeah.
Yeah, just about 28. And so 27 years old, and almost 28. You're gonna have 40 units by the end of this year. So what is your kind of long-term goal? Like, let's just say like that 50 mark. At 50 years old, you probably don't want to be grinding like you are now so much. But what's your goal kind of by that time and kind of more long-term?
Yeah. So, I've done a lot of computer programming. I've seen like the venture capital funded business model where you take on these investors who don't really care about you. They're just in it to make money. Not a fan of that. I've also seen the business model where like some guy starts a business, has no succession plan, and then when he's 60, he winds it down and doesn't have anything to save for 40 years of hard work, right? So I kind of align somewhere in the middle where I would like to leave my kids a business to run if they want to when they're done. So for me, I am in the business of compounding our capital and our investors' capital quickly over the long term so that when my kids are old enough, if they want to, they can work in the business. And if they don't want to, that's fine too. Like we're not going to force it on them. Yeah. But I'm pretty passionate about entrepreneurship because it's fun, it's creative. One of the first things we learn about God in the Bible is that he's creative. He goes in and creates all these things. And entrepreneurship is a huge medium that people can use to express their creativity. Yeah. You can create new systems, new ideas, new businesses. In real estate, you can even build new buildings, and it's very cool. So with that in mind, I'm not interested in building a small business. I want to build a big business. And for a long time, we always said our goals were 30 units by 30 and 500 units by 50. So 30 units by 30, like check, that's done. Yeah. We may need to revisit the 500 by 50. There's literally no math behind those other than that they sounded cool. So maybe they're not really good goals. But we'd also like to start doing like some third-party management. And then to go back to the mobile home park idea, like we have this 18-pad mobile home park that we're buying just outside Fredericton, and it's got 60 undeveloped acres. So this is kind of going to get us into the affordable housing business. I'm sure you're pretty familiar with what Marcel Lebrun's doing at 12 Neighbors. Yep. And he set it up. His corporate structure is very different than what we're doing. Like he's running as a nonprofit. We're a for-profit corporation that has employees and stuff that we need to feed. So it's a little different, but we're kind of, I think, aligned on the fact that Fredericton needs a lot more housing and New Brunswick and Canada as a whole. So, we hit last year almost record low housing starts. So record low number of homes being built. And we hit record high immigration. So that's just like a bad combination. Yeah. And that's why prices are going so nuts on all kinds of housing, like housing to buy, housing to rent, because there's just not enough places to live for how many people are coming in. So we would like to get into more into the mobile home park development space because mobile homes are cheap and it gives tenants or they shouldn't be called tenants, they should be called residents because they own the homes, but it gives them the opportunity to build something or buy something that they're proud of and that they own without having to pay the crazy prices that like regular stick construction costs.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Let's kind of dive back into that and chat a little bit about the mini home park that you're going to be closing on in a couple weeks here, and what your goals are for that, and why it interests you, and just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we really like the mobile home park business as a category because it's got a bunch of tailwinds behind it that regular apartments don't have. So number one, residents own the homes and they rent the land underneath the home. So they call it a land lease deal. And what that means is that it is much harder for them to move out. So the average tenancy is way longer. In Canada, the average tenancy in a mobile home park is 14 years, whereas for an apartment, it's like 18 months. So there's just a lot less move in, move out, a lot less overhead because of that. So that's great for us because we can manage more leases with less staff. Another benefit to that is just that the residents actually own something. So from like a societal point of view, I think it's a good thing for people to own the homes that they live in. And mobile home parks are a very affordable way to achieve that. And then number three, just like for the business, it is operationally a lot cheaper to run a land lease deal than it is an apartment because you don't own a lot of the systems that are prone to breaking down. So in an apartment, you would typically get work orders related to like the plumbing system or the electrical system or the HVAC system, your heating and cooling, et cetera. And all of that's owned by the residents. So they're in charge of maintaining that and repairing it if it breaks, which gives them a pride of ownership and helps us keep our expenses down. So in an apartment building, your expense ratio, so like the percentage of your rent that goes right to expenses each year, and this excludes your mortgage or any of your financing things. So you can think about it, this would be your profit margin if you bought a building cash. So your expense ratio is around 35 to 40%. So if your rents are $1,000 for a unit, usually you would spend about $350 of that between insurance, property taxes, and then maintenance and repairs. On a land lease deal like a mobile home park, it's usually 10 to 15%. So it's just a lot cheaper to run them. But all of those reasons are big areas that make us bullish on mobile home parks. This specific deal that we're buying has 60 acres of undeveloped land that we can use to doze down and chop some trees down, plant some grass, and build more pads for more homes to move in the future. So the existing homes in this park are on 1 acre pads. So if we follow that paradigm, it'd be 60 more homes. The industry standard for mobile home parks is 15 homes per acre. So that's like extremely dense, where the only thing separating the homes would be like a driveway. Yeah. We have some parks like that in Fredericton that I'm sure you can picture. We'll probably end up somewhere between maybe 3 or 4 homes per acre, maybe a little less. We're going to work very closely with the municipality to see like what we can get approved for, but it's going to be a lot more affordable homes for the city of Fredericton, which we're really excited about.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And you know, it's definitely what we need, kind of thing. Like we chatted a little bit before the break. You know, there's a big boom of immigration, and there's a decline in housing and development and stuff that's going on. So, being able to provide, some more affordable housing and just more housing in general will hopefully, balance the market out a little bit here in Fredericton and just allow for, happier people. I don't know.
Yeah, man, nobody likes to be housing insecure. The government, I think, has done an okay job at addressing this. Like, it's very clearly a strategic priority for them. I think they've been a little slow to act on some things, but last year they introduced this new program through CMHC called the CMHC MLI Select program. It's a mortgage insurance program that allows you to basically, for multifamily properties, so 6 units and higher is their definition of multifamily. It's 5 units and higher. But they basically allow you to insure a mortgage through CMHC with significantly better terms than you would traditionally be able to get from a bank. And the motivation for this is to help encourage developers to build more housing. So with MLI Select, you can go up to 50-year amortization. You can do 95% loan to value. And that moved the needle a little bit.
Yeah, seriously. Now, can you do new builds and stuff with this as well, or is it just for if you're just buying an existing building?
Yeah, to qualify for MLI Select, there's like a points system that you have to satisfy. You have to get, I think, 100 points between 3 different categories, and there's this whole rubric on the CMHC website. I would encourage you to just go look at the rubric because I'm not going to be able to remember it perfectly from memory. Yeah. But the 3 areas that you can get points from are, number 1, accessibility. So, for example, if your building has an elevator, you get a certain number of points. If it has wheelchair ramps for every set of stairs, you get a certain number of points, et cetera. Another one is energy efficiency. So if you have like high efficiency heat pumps, a lot of insulation, you get points for those. And an engineer would have to come in and measure those, obviously. And then the third points system rubric element is affordability. So if you have 10% of your units that are under, I think the threshold is 30% of the median income in your municipality, then you get a certain number of points. If it's 30% of units, you get more points. If it's 50% of units, you get more points. So for used buildings, most people qualify solely under the affordability element just because it's much easier to qualify than to try to retrofit the whole building with accessibility or energy efficiency upgrades. Yeah. But for new buildings, they typically have very high rents because you can't build new affordable housing. That's just not how it works. If you build a building, it's usually a Class A luxury apartment, and it deteriorates into Class B or Class C over time. But they can qualify through energy efficiency or accessibility.
Yeah. Now now talk a little bit about that program. I mean, so a couple months ago when it was kind of introduced, a lot of people I think were pretty excited about it, and that kind of resulted in some backup, right?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from guys that I know that work pretty closely with the program is that if you buy a building right now and put in an application to get one of these CMHC MLI Select mortgages, your application will take like between 6 and 9 months to be reviewed. And that's like, you might not even get approved at that point.
Yeah.
So there's a couple ways you can get around this if you are really dead set on buying a building. Number one, you can buy a building all cash and then refinance it into this program afterwards. And if you can get up to 95% loan to value, you'd be able to get almost all of your money back. So that's one option. There's also some lenders that will allow you to get like a 1-year repayable bridge loan. So you get this bridge loan. It's usually pretty high interest, but it's oftentimes interest-only payments. And then whenever your MLI Select loan is approved, you can use the MLI Select loan to pay off the bridge loan. And that's why it's called a bridge loan. It's a bridge just from purchase until your real long-term mortgage gets approved and dispersed.
Yeah. And right now it's looking like one of those strategies is probably what you're going to have to take if you want to get into this program because, most people aren't willing to give you a, 6 to 9 month finance condition in your offer, so trying to purchase it, just as normal, a little bit cleaner. And then, doing a refi into this program later is probably the route most people got to take, unless they have, an off market deal that the seller is willing to wait for. But yeah, that's definitely the route that I imagine a lot of people are going to take. So let's talk about, just today, right before we were getting prep for this podcast, you're always kind of following the trends and what's going on, whether it's on Twitter or somewhere. What is it that you heard about new builds?
Yeah, so to date in Canada, if you build new rental construction, you have to pay, the buyer of that building has to pay HST. So depending on your, that rate varies by province, but it's the Canadian term for sales tax. And in New Brunswick, where we are, we have the highest HST in the country at 15%. So if you build a new multifamily building, you sell it for $1 million, there's $150,000 of extra HST on all new housing, which has made things a lot more expensive than they need to be. So just as you said, right as we were sitting for this call, I got notification that the federal government has announced that there's going to be no more HST on new rental construction, which is awesome. I was talking to one guy who's a big real estate developer on the West Coast, and he said they have about 1,000 units that were pending, they were on hold basically, that they're probably now going to be able to move forward with because they're going to have buyers who are willing to buy it at 15% lower price. So that's going to cause a lot more new construction to get built in Canada, which is awesome.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, and definitely what we need, here in Canada, and especially here in New Brunswick. As like you say, New Brunswick is still one of the cheapest places to live in Canada. So we got so many people coming in, and it's awesome. I mean, New Brunswick is a beautiful spot. We've lived here forever, and it's a beautiful spot, beautiful place to grow up and raise a family. But if we don't have the infrastructure and places for people to live, it could run into some issues. So hopefully there'll just be some more opportunities to incentivize new construction and building and development stuff and affordable housing like we've chatted about in the past. So
yeah, people give landlords and developers a really hard time, but ultimately the reason why rental prices and home prices have become so mismatched is just that it's a supply-demand imbalance. So there's not enough supply for a lot of demand. We had record immigration last year in Canada as a country, and over the last 2 or 3 years since the coronavirus pandemic happened, we've had this humongous influx of people moving to New Brunswick because all of a sudden their nice, cushy jobs in downtown Toronto could now be done anywhere. So they would rather pay $1,500 rent in New Brunswick than $4,000 rent in Toronto, and a lot of people came here because of that. And developers just cannot respond to demand like that as fast as the demand can change. So there's been a lot of housing insecurity over the last 3 years or so here. Yeah, no, that's right. So let's chat about a little bit about some tips for people that are kind of thinking about getting into real estate, maybe thinking about buying, maybe they're thinking about expanding their portfolio, whatever it is, and just kind of go through some processes that you go through to kind of look at properties, do some underwriting on them. When you're walking through doing tours and stuff of buildings, what are you looking for?
And so we'll chat a little bit about that, and then I want to chat a little bit about your property management software that you kind of developed. So what are you kind of looking for on a building?
Yeah, so we basically look for a few different things. I'll describe it pretty broadly by saying purpose-built multifamily with within driving distance to good jobs where the in-place rents are significantly below the market rents, essentially. So I'll go through all those. So I mean, the last point's pretty self-explanatory, so I'll talk about the other two. But purpose-built multifamily just means that it wasn't converted. So we bought a building once years ago that was like an old, very old, large home in downtown Fredericton, one of the historical homes, and it had been converted into like 3 units, and none of the core systems of the building were updated to reflect that. So you had like 3 units that were sharing 2 water tanks, and like you would have circuits going through the home that powered like half of one guy's living room and half of another guy's kitchen. And the maintenance burden on owning a building like that is just tremendously higher than a purpose-built multifamily building that was built as a 4-unit building or built as a duplex. Because anytime that a maintenance technician has to troubleshoot any of the core systems of the building, it just takes way longer, and it's just brutal. So,
I mean, like there's this. So I did some management on a building, a couple months ago for a little while, and it was a 4-unit, and it was converted, and you had to go. The overhead lights in one unit was connected to a panel in a different unit, and then in the first unit, it had like the laundry and dryer for the washer and dryer for the building connected to that panel. But then there were switches on one wall that were connected to a different unit. And like when we had the electrician in there, he was like, look, there's like nothing we can do. But like tenants were technically paying their own utilities, and they didn't even know that they were really paying somebody else's, utilities. And so it just, it just runs into, issues down the road, and then tenants find out and they're like, no, I don't want to pay for this guy's lights. And then they're up there in their unit flicking the breaker off because they found it is connected to somebody else's unit. Anyway, but such is life.
Yeah, we bought a building once where it was another conversion, and they had actually split it onto 3 separate electrical panels and 3 separate electrical meters. So you're like, oh, that's great. But once we dug in a little bit, some tenants were moving out and they had turned their power off. Let's just say they were in unit 1. When they moved out, the tenant in unit 2 called me and said, hey, why is my power off? Like MB Power had the meters labeled backwards for years since they had been split. So you just run into a lot of trouble with conversions. And we still own one conversion on Charlotte Street, you know where it is, and not super delighted to own that property for the long term. So we'll probably sell it eventually.
Yeah. But it is what it is. So what's the next kind of criteria that you're looking for? So obviously kind of purpose-built multifamily. Ideally, everything's, set up properly. It's built. You got, 4 to 6 units. Tenants can pay their utilities. They don't have to worry about, random walls and electrical that's been put up. So what's kind of the next thing you're looking for?
Yeah. So the other 2 things I said were driving distance to jobs and below market rents. The rents thing's self-explanatory. We've already talked about the BRRRR strategy for that, but the driving distance to jobs is just really important because the number one reason tenants turn down an apartment is that it's too long of a commute to where they work. So in the Fredericton metropolitan area, you're not really going to run into too many places that are not commutable to their jobs. But, the further out you go from Fredericton, the worse it is. Like we've looked at Oromocto, Harvey, areas around Fredericton, and there's just like unquestionably less demand for those apartments than if you were downtown, unless they have some kind of unique amenity like a bunch of land with them where people can hang out and have bonfires and stuff. But yeah, the closer you are to downtown, the better, with diminishing returns as you get like really close. It doesn't really matter if you go from, say, George Street to Queen Street. That's not that much of a lifestyle improvement for people. But if you go from Regent Street to George Street, that matters a lot to people.
That's good to know. I didn't really even think too much about that, because the rental market is so, in such high demand. I just figured, the rent's the same everywhere. But and then you got to consider that too. It's like, even if it is a little farther out, you're going to get it rented, but you have to consider when you're running your numbers that, okay, it's going to get rented, but it might be $100 less a month or $75 less a month, for this particular unit because, it's in 5 or 10 or 15 minute extra drive for the, potential tenants and stuff. So,
yeah. And then other things to look at when you're trying to forecast the demand for an apartment is just like the amenities. So people really care about having like on-premise laundry, or in-unit laundry is even better. But generally, people are okay with on-premise. We own or we manage one building where there's no on-premise laundry, so there's like a nearby laundromat that we have to tell them they need to go to, and that is just a complete deal breaker for a lot of people. So that's a big one. Dishwashers are another big one. Things like that. And then as far as keeping your maintenance burden low, it's really important to make sure that the core systems of the building have been upgraded if it's an old building. So anything like 1980s or older, you need to make sure that like the electrical's all been redone, the plumbing's all been redone. And it's incredible to me how many people will gut renovate a building, but not actually update the system. So they like rip off all the drywall. While it's open, they're in a prime opportunity to like, okay, now I don't have to do any demolition to actually replace the things that really matter, but I'm just going to cover them up with drywall anyway and leave these old systems in place. So that stuff really matters.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, and just doing all your due diligence and stuff when looking at these buildings, you know, getting inspection done and just making sure that there's, you know, if somebody says that they did work, make sure that there's proof of that kind of thing.
Yep.
You know, if there's permits that need to be pulled and stuff like that, just make sure, you know, because you don't want to be running into that stuff later because, you know, everybody has a horror story, but if you can avoid it, you know, as much as possible and just, you know, do the proper due diligence, then.
Yeah, man, people lie through their teeth. It's pretty crazy. Like sellers will tell you anything. The only person that, it comes back to the old saying, you know, don't ask the barber if you need a haircut. So don't ask the person selling you some real estate if it's in good shape because they'll just always tell you yes,
great
right?
Shape, great deal, you know.
I
put all this money in. Yeah. Don't ask the barber. That's a good one. I haven't heard that. So we kind of touched a little bit about you, what you do for work, you know, on top of real estate investing, you know, and what you're doing now is kind of software development. So you're working for, you know, a company called, you can say it if you want. I don't know.
It's Passive, yeah.
Passive. And awesome company. They do like investment portfolio management kind of thing.
Yep.
I use them personally. They're awesome. You know, but Nick's works for them doing software development. But on the side, you also develop your own software and your own programs and stuff to use. So tell me about this newest program that you've developed for property managers and stuff.
Yeah. So many years ago when I was first learning programming, the tutorial we went through was building like a real estate listing software. So I took a course that basically guided you through building this app from scratch that was designed to list properties for sale with pictures and with prices and things like that. So when we started doing our own property management years ago, I morphed that sample code base into something that kind of suited our desire because I didn't want to pay for any of the commercial systems out there. Then as we scaled up, I was like, okay, it's time to go to something more professional and tried out a few different systems and they all sucked. They were either super expensive or super hard to use or just like super slow. Like you would click something and 5 seconds later, the page would render and they all felt like technology from the 90s. So over time, I've kind of built up this internal tool we've used to manage all our properties. I haven't really actually used it that much because now we have an assistant, right? But it's called Rentalize. We're starting to commercialize that because I've had some friends who have said they want to use it for their companies. So starting to onboard some customers, but handles all of our accounting, all of our leasing. And the thing I really like about it is that since we built it, it's very tailored to New Brunswick rentals. And what that means is, so like in New Brunswick, when you sign a lease with a resident, there's a standard New Brunswick lease agreement form that you have to fill out and file with the rentalsman. This system's so far tailored to the New Brunswick market. So if you have a lease that you want to sign for a property that's in the system, you click the building, you click the unit, you type in what the rent amount is, you put in some information about the tenant, you can click generate PDF and it'll spit out the PDF for you to send to the rentalsman. And then you know it's in sync with your system, you know that it's filled out properly. A bunch of little things like that are big time savers for us. And automations and saving time in property management cannot be overrated because what you're doing as a property management company is that you're basically running tasks at scale and they're all repeated. It's all the same stuff over and over again. And at the same time, the biggest expense on any property management company is labor. So if you can save people a lot of time with good software, the software can basically charge you whatever the heck it wants because you're going to save so much on labor from your people being able to move faster and especially spend less time correcting errors that it'll be well worth it. So that's kind of what we've been working on.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, you know, I look forward to that. I've kind of seen, you know, Nick and I have been chatting about this over the past couple months and stuff as he's been developing it and starting to, you know, onboard some clients and stuff. And, you know, I'm super excited to see where it goes. I know it's going to be a big, you know, success. And so, you know, if you want to check it out again, it's called Rentalize. I'm sure you can Google it. and check it out online. I'm sure there's a contact form or something, that you can send Nick an email. But yeah, it's going to be awesome, and I'm super excited to see where that goes, and just helps you and all these other, because I deal with a lot of clients that are property managers, and like you said before at the beginning, they're at that stage where the tenant has an issue, they just text you, in the middle of the night, or they text you whenever. And, if you need, a contractor in, you're the one who's got to be, texting and calling people, looking up phone numbers and stuff like this, doing all this and that. So this is going to really help, keep people automated, keep people, organized. And you're also going to have like some accounting software and stuff in there too as well, right? Where you kind of can automate payments and stuff from tenants and whatnot.
Yeah, payments will probably come later, just because there's a lot of compliance and stuff you have to do to get onboarded with one of these big payment providers. But definitely accounting is kind of a core functionality of any property management company, because when you're running property management at scale, usually you have separate accounting accounts for every owner. And then when you submit a work order, like an invoice automatically gets created to bill that owner for the work you did. You can debit their account and credit your account, et cetera. But yeah, accounting is like the core functionality, and everything else comes after that.
Yeah. So this has been awesome. So we're going to kind of conclude here in just a sec, but Nick is always open to chat with anybody interested in real estate investing, anybody who's maybe has a pile of cash that's looking for a place to invest it and stuff. Now, if somebody wants to kind of potentially partner with you or something like that, chat with you, maybe it's through just like a silent partner, hard money lending, or maybe they want to partner on buying a property. Is there a way they can contact you, or do you want people to contact you, or like what are your thoughts around that? Like if somebody wants to kind of get into it with you.
Yeah, you can email me. My work email is nick@foxhillcorp.com. That's our holding company. And happy to talk shop, help you guys out however I can.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Nick, I really appreciate you coming on here, and this has been awesome. It's super fun. I mean, we chat, all the time, but it's great to kind of, finally share some of your knowledge and information and stuff with some more people, and this is super exciting. And we're definitely going to have you back on, and I know that a lot of people are going to look forward to kind of hearing about. As you get into this, mini home park and, affordable housing, development projects and stuff like that. And yeah, we'll talk some more about, as you get into some of these bigger projects, how you built this team of, developers to kind of, help, build the roads, make the pads, get these homes in, and how you're sourcing them and stuff as well. Because there's going to be other people that are interested in kind of starting mini home parks, or maybe buying existing ones and growing them. So, I'm going to be looking forward to hearing about it, and I know other people are too. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you have any questions or want to learn more, feel free to check out my website at gosman.ca. Wherever you're listening from, leave me a 5-star review and let me know what you'd like to see in future episodes. Also, if you're a buyer or a seller and looking for some guidance in this ever-changing real estate market, I want to work with you. So get in touch today through my website at gosman.ca, or you can search Mackay Gosman Realtor on Google and get connected with me through any of my social media platforms. Thanks so much. We'll catch you on the next episode.